Hello everyone, it's Tony here from Lockster Reads. This is just an update on where I am in terms of my reading so far this month. I finished Summer, which is books 3 to 6 of A Dance to the Music of Time by Anthony Powell. We have just, now I don't know if that's good because it's such a bright, come on, you can do it. You can do it. Maybe I can do it that way round. Oh, bugger. Trying to do this without. There you go. Oh, there you go. With the TV series cover, this is the edition I'm reading. That's those three books are. God, my brain. Why is my brain not working? I should really prepare for these things. Anyway, they are at Lady Molly's, Casanova's Chinese restaurant, and the Kindly Ones, and they lead up to the beginning of World War II, and there's a lot of talk of marriage and of children. The characters from the first three books, well, they were pretty much grown up by the end of by the end of book one, but they are involved in business and love and falling out of love, falling into love, running off with people, going to Spain for the Civil War, and many other things. I still love it. I can't recommend this series enough. Autumn, which is the next three books, is I've started to read today. They are funny, thoughtful. They talk about what the arts and what the arts mean. They talk about friendships, about love, about marriage. As I said before, jokingly, it's kind of like Proust, but if P.G. Wodehouse had written some of it. I can't recommend them enough, and I'm only halfway through. I'm hoping that the series, it's 12 books in total, so I'm hoping the series doesn't fall apart in the second half, but I can't see how it's going to, based on the writing so far. Autumn, the three books in Autumn, I think, cover World War II. I mean, certainly the start of the book 7 is World War II. It has made me want to read Evelyn Moore's Sword of Honour trilogy, as a sort of a companion piece, but I won't. I'll wait till I've finished. I don't want to get too carried away because we've still got 6 books to go. The other two things I've been reading are related to the Civil War. I am still working my way through this. I keep being distracted by other things, but I'm pretty much a fair chunk through it now, and with notes and further reading, etc. I've probably only got 150 pages to go. This is really good, though. Diane Purkiss has done something really. It's a history of the English Civil War, and now is not the time to talk about the terminology we use for this period of English and British histories. The more I read of this, the more I think, because there's more than one English Civil War, really, because there's a break in between, like a sort of half time. And secondly, there are wars with Scotland, in Scotland, and there are wars with Ireland and in Ireland, and so it's all linked together. But this is really good because one of the reasons this is good, Diane Purkiss can write, and it's nice and straightforward, and it's easy to understand. Secondly, she uses a lot of contemporary references, left from letters, from pamphlets, from books. So it really brings it to life in a way that sometimes history books don't always do. It's great also making you understand what living in this period was like, both for rich and for poor. It's probably more interesting about the poor because you hear about what happened, the life of the rich more often in history than anything else. The suffering of it in terms of like hunger, the fact that armies don't get fed or paid and are often then turned loose and become brigands and I would say pirates, but they're not on the sea. But they and how people are affected by being thrown out of their homes because they are seen to be parliamentarians in royalist areas or royalists in parliamentary areas. The struggle to the way that it divides family. There is a book, I believe, called By the Sword Divided, which was made into a television series. But By the Sword Divided is what this book is about. There are sons who fight on one side and fathers who fight on the other side. There are brothers that fight on one side and brothers that fight on the other side. There are wives who's and daughters. It's a horrible period of history, but it's also an important period of history. So I think it's important to know more about, especially in our current political environment when division. It's not as bad, obviously, as bad as this. We're not so at this point taking arms against each other, but there's something it's useful to know about how a society can fall apart. When I was at university, we did the English Civil War. We focused a lot on the causes of the English Civil War. I wrote an essay on the causes of the English Civil War, which I got quite a decent mark for, if I remember rightly. Boast. And I remember things in there about sort of religion, obviously about religion, about rising gentry versus declining gentry. I mean, one of the things that history does seem to teach us is if there is a class of rising people, they could be merchants or whatever, and they are making money and they are buying property and they are a thing, but there's a class above them of, let's call them aristocracy, who dominate all the politics, dominate all the positions of positions of authority, who get all the contracts because the king hands them out to his favourites and friends. When that happens, that's when, and if that rising class of people doesn't get what they perceive they should get for their money, i.e. we have lots of money, why aren't we getting a say in the politics, then that often causes that often contributes to a revolution. This doesn't go into that kind of thing. This is more of a sort of, as I said, more of a. I'm going on about it far too long, really, but because I haven't finished it, and what am I going to say about it when I finished it? Well, whatever. Anyway, recommended this, really good, and this is the first book I'm reading for my half-assed historian process, because it is a general history. There is also there was also a good nice section in here on about 10 pages on Milton, which is going to be useful for the exercise that I am working on. And the other book I'm currently reading is also an English Civil War related book. It is book one of now, God, why can't I remember the name of the book one of Ronald Hutton's Oliver Cromwell biography. This one's called The Making of Oliver Cromwell. Ronald Hutton is one of my favourite historians because he's very good at saying, look, this is what we've come to believe, but the evidence for this is virtually non-existent. And what we're doing is making educated guesses based on the limited evidence we have. He does a load of really excellent lectures on YouTube on issues around paganism and like what pagan belief systems were like, and how we think we know what they were like. But in this Cromwell book, he's already said a few times, look, this has been repeated over and over again in Cromwell biographies, but we don't really know what the sources for it is. We don't really know. We know almost nothing about his life before he was 30. I mean, very little about his life before he was 30. There is some stuff, and there are some letters, but fundamentally, nobody knows what he believed, what he didn't believe, up until he becomes a more public figure. And even then, for a while, some of that is spun. Because the nature of the figure of Cromwell, some of that is spun. A lot of what comes down to this is it was either written by his enemies or was written by his allies, trying to justify what he did. and therefore getting to the truth of what we're never going to know what Cromwell, but some things about Cromwell, it's impossible, barring some kind of miraculous discovery of a diary or something. But that's unlikely to happen, and even then, question mark. But it is quite. It's really Rosso Ronald Hart's work. I like. I'm really enjoying the Cromwell biography. I forgot to get a picture of it for the illustration. There's a second volume that I got through NetGalley, which is why I want to read the first book before I get onto the second book. So for the rest, so that's this month so far. This week, this sort of last week or so. In terms of going ahead, the rest of September, I'm just flying by the seat of my pants, basically based on library books and various projects and various ideas I've got ticking along. October is obviously Victober, and so I'm probably going to read at least one Victorian book. I haven't decided which one yet. I'll have a look at people's videos. I know Christy Louis Dostoevsky in Space did her Victober video today, but also I'm fundamentally preparing for November and Remembrance Reads by reading and rereading some stuff. There is a potential that I've got an interview organised with an author around Remembrance Reads, so I need to prepare by doing some rereading and actually making some notes and thinking of some questions. I'll announce that as and when I've got it confirmed, which will be some point in October. I also decided that I have all these projects going on, and I thought, well, for the rest of the year, let's just focus on a couple of things. So I'm focusing on the Civil War stuff, which is the half-assed historian stuff, and I'm going to focus on sometime, I think it was 2018. The Guardian did 1,000 novels you should that they thought were the best novels, the 1,000 best novels in literature. Now I converted that into a spreadsheet. They did some very cheeky things, like putting Discworld as one book when it's actually 42 books. The same thing they did with, I think, they did that with a few series where they put the series name and not the individual counts of books, so it's actually nearer to 1,200 books when you count it all together. So it's a bit of a cheat, but I did actually start my whole sort of ridiculous reading spreadsheet started with that spreadsheet of 1,000 books, and I have so far, or up until this point, read 210 of them. So it's 18% of the 1,166 that are on the list. I had started reading them in alphabetical order, so I have read The Face of Another by Kobe Abe, which is a very strange but very interesting book. Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe, which I recommend highly. Anthills of the Savannah, also by Chinua Achebe. It's part of a trilogy. I've got the last book to read of that. I might try and read that in October, actually, because it's quite short. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams, which I'm not going to say much about here. Silver Stallion by Jung Hoyo Ahn, which is about the Korean War. The Vietnamese War. The Vietnamese War. Or is it the Korean War? Oh God, that's embarrassing. I've forgotten. No, it's the Korean War. I don't know why. That's embarrassing. Le Grand Meules, my French is terrible, by Henri Alain Fournier. Little Women by Louisa May Alcott, which was the first time I'd ever read that book. Loved it. Surprising how much I loved it. I cried twice reading it on the bus, which is not a good thing. The Death of a Hero by Richard Aldington, which is a World War I book, which I also thought was great. Non-Stop by Brian Aldiss. The Man with the Golden Arm by Nelson Algren. Fantomas by Marcel Alain and Pierre Sylvestre. Epitaph for a Spy, The Mask of Demetrius and Journey into Fear by Eric Ambler. Lucky Jim by Kingsley Amis. Money by Martin Amis, which I hate. It's one of the few books I genuinely loathe. I've read quite a fair chunk of Martin Amis, and I really like his earlier books. And then I find it a real struggle to read his later, chunkier books. and that's where I got to basically. Then the next ones, there were two. There was London Fields by Martin Amis to read, which I've tried once before and hadn't got around to, so I left it. There are other books lower down that I've read over time. So I think for the rest of this year, I'm gonna focus on getting through the A's on at least on this. So that would be two Martin Amis books, London Fields and the Information, Untouchable by Mort Raj, and the posthumous memoirs of Bras Cubas by Joachim Maria Macedo de Assis, Dom Casamoro, also by de Assis, Behind the Scenes at the Museum by Kate Atkinson, Cat's Eye and the Blind Assassin by Margaret Atwood, then a whole chunk of Jane Austen books, and then the New York trilogy in the Country of Last Things by Paul Auster or Auster. I should have checked how he says his name. I should have checked how a lot of these people say their names. I think I can get through that. I might even be able to make a dent into the Bees, which is Bainbridge, which is 3 Beryl Bainbridge books, a Nicholson Baker book, and a run of ballads before we hit Balzac's La Comédie Humaine, which is another one where the Guardian put it as one book when in fact it's about 85 books. I mean, it's novellas and short stories and novels, but it's another kind of thing. So, and I think Balzac is a project for it, is at least a year long project. So I need to think about what I do then. So I know I've just read a load of titles, and then also I want to get to my NetGalley books, which are all due to. I'm a bit behind on. I can't remember if I went through the NetGalley books, but it's The Private Life of James II by Justine Brown, The Army That Never Was by Taylor Downing, Swimming Pretty by Vicki Valosik, Reign of Ruin, Tokyo, Hiroshima and the Surrender of Japan by Richard Overy, The Boundless Deep by Richard Holmes, The Making of Oliver Cromwell by Ronald Hutton, which is the book I'm reading now. The second book is Oliver Cromwell, Commander-in-Chief, Searching for John DeWitt by John Chase, God's Own Gentlewoman, The Life of Margaret Paston, Diane Watt, Malcolm Before X by Patrick Parr, Into the Reich, The Red Army's Advance to the Oder in 1945 by Prit, Buttar, How to Be Avant-Garde, Modern Artists and the Quest to End Art by Morgan Faulkner, Kings, Queens and Fallen Monarchies by Robert Stove, Something Wicked, The Lives, Crimes and Deaths of the Pendle Witches by Carol Ann Lee, The Last Dynasty, Ancient Egypt, from Alexander the Great to Cleopatra by Toby Wilkinson, Awake, William Blake and the Power of the Imagination, and unfortunately she was an infomaniac, A New History of Rome's Imperial Women by Joan Smith. So, that's my update. That was a long list of titles of potential for you to listen to. I will try and list them in my... Will I list them in my notes? Let's be honest here. Yeah, I'll see what I can do. I don't think it's too much of a problem. I can probably cut and paste from the Excel spreadsheet. So yeah, that's where I am at the moment. There is a load of library books which I've got till September the 22nd to read, but they're going to go back if I haven't got through them by that point, or at least most of them will go back. I think I'll keep the English Civil War ones because they're useful for projects that I'm working on at the moment. I'm sorry if that's a bit rambling. I find. I've been thinking a lot about reading and why we read, and not why we read, why I read, and what I'm reading for. And I realised that there's a danger with things like Goodreads, and people have talked about this before, of becoming obsessed with the numbers at the expense. So never mind the quality, feel the width, as the saying goes. And I feel that I don't necessarily think that's a problem. I always read quite fast. I always read quite a lot of books. But what I have found myself is reading books that I think I should read rather than books I want to read. Now that 1,000 book list seems to be a total. That's exactly what that is, and it is. But that appeals to me because I used it as a way of reading books that I would never have read otherwise. I would never have read Little Women if it hadn't been on that list, and I would have missed out. I never would have read. Well, there's loads of books on that list that I never would have read. and some of those books have led to other books. Like the Kobayabe book led me to read Women of the Dunes, which is a very odd book and a very strange film. But I saw that film a long time ago in a galaxy far away, and it sort of, it was one of those films. There's a handful of films from my sort of that I watched between the ages of 10 and 19 that I probably would never have seen. Movie Drone was a contributor to this, but Channel 4 and BBC 2, in the days before streaming, when they used to just show odd films, and there's a handful of those where they sort of had an effect on me. I don't necessarily understand them. I probably saw the Women of the Dunes when I was 14. When it must have been completely baffling to me. I do want to rewatch it actually. I keep meaning to, and I've lost my. Basically, I want to make this channel more about the things I want to be reading because I want to read them. And I don't care if that means that nobody watches the channel. I mean, it's not like hundreds of people are watching the channel as it is, but I want it to be. It's a way for me for two things really. One, for me to try and understand what I'm reading and trying to read more deeply. And number two, it is to talk to other people about books that I'm reading and that I love, and to hopefully, with some of the more obscure, strange ones, get them in front of people when they won't have seen them before. And I feel like I need to take some time to do that. I'm going to do, as I said, I'm going to do a proper half-assed historian introductory video, probably at some point this week, and I'm going to do a video on another video update on next Monday on what I've been reading, and then October is going to be, I'll do an October video, and I'll talk about some of the things I'm reading and some of the preparation, and hopefully at some point in October I'll announce the video, the author video, and I might even try and get another author to do it, and then I need to work out the practicalities of how I do that, record it, upload it, etc. Anyway, that's it. I've been going waffling on for long enough. This is one of the other things that I find with this is I think while I talk, which is a terrible thing if you're a friend of mine, because it just means all you hear is me talking and my voice over and over again. It's not like I love the sound of my own voice. I find it's a good way of trying to work out how I'm thinking about things, and that's why the YouTube is dangerous. But there you go. That's where we are. Have a good one, and I will catch up with you all in a few days. Right, bye bye.